Welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys. We got a great show today, including, this will probably be in the post game. So members, count yourself lucky. Interesting person potentially running for president on the Republican side in 2024. There's a lot of drums in that story, lots of drums, okay? And it's a guy I know well, intriguing. Okay, TYT.com/join to become a member. Hit the join button below if you're watching on YouTube. Easy peasy. $4.99 is like a cup of coffee at Starbucks, and it's once a month and you get the post games. All right, let's check in to see how we're doing. We're pressing on. That's what we're doing during coronavirus, during the disaster that is 2020. And so let's take a look at the thermometer. TYT.com/go. Hello, 30,926. Can I see 31,000 after the break? Can I see it? You guys make this show happen, and we do a show like no other. Today, my 7-year-old daughter, maybe we'll talk about this one in the post game too, said, Baba, how many TYTs are there? And I said, only one. And yes, I went camping over the weekend in the desert. Jeez, and Lord mercy, but we're gonna save that one for old school. Members get old school too. That's the $9.99 level if you're on YouTube. Just $4.99 on our website, tyt.com/join. All right, Casper, go.
All right, well, we begin with a tragic and devastating story, but one that many of our viewers wanted us to fill them in on. So, Army investigators have found the remains of an Army special, Vanessa Guillén, in a shallow grave in Texas. The suspect in her murder, Aaron Robinson, who was also in the military, killed himself as officers closed in on him. However, there is a second suspect in custody, and that is the girlfriend of Aaron Robinson. Cicely Aguilar is her name. Robinson's girlfriend has been charged with evidence tampering, and she also admitted to helping Robinson dispose of Guillén's body. So this is a story that's been developing for quite some time now. There was a lot of mystery surrounding what happened to Guillén, and now, unfortunately, with the discovery of her remains, it's become abundantly clear that she was murdered, and she was murdered in an incredibly vicious and violent way. In fact, why don't we go to the next video that has some details on what happened to her.
The complaint says that suspect Cicely Aguilar's boyfriend, specialist Aaron Robinson, struck Guillén in the head with a hammer multiple times, killing her on base before placing her in a box. Robinson then allegedly picked Aguilar up to help him dispose of Guillén's body. According to the complaint, they attempted to dismember and burn the body before burying the remains.
I mean, this story is just so horrific. And Guillén's family says that she had alleged that Robinson was sexually harassing her, but was afraid to report it up the chain of command because she was concerned that there would be retaliation against her. We'll get to that in just a minute, but I do have some more details on what happened to her. The Washington Post is reporting that Guillén was bludgeoned to death at Fort Hood on April 22nd, near where she was last seen. The remains found were so close to a site searched by investigators 9 days earlier that they unknowingly stood on top of them, one search leader said. Now, Cicely Aguilar was arrested on July 1st in Bell County, Texas. She again is the girlfriend of Aaron Robinson, the soldier who killed himself when officials approached him about Vanessa Guillén's disappearance. A criminal complaint shows that Aguilar confessed to dismembering and helping bury Guillén's body, and she helped officials gather evidence against Robinson shortly before he killed himself. So she's now cooperating with the authorities and giving them the information that they needed to discover Guillén's remains and also to move forward with this case. You know, there was some talk about how Aguilar had engaged in this relationship with Robinson, and in the military, that's actually against the rules because Aguilar was still married and she had an estranged husband. So when it comes to the motive, there are these allegations that they went through with this tragic murder because they wanted to prevent Guillén from reporting their relationship. But the family is saying, no, that is not what was going on. Robinson was sexually harassed harassing her, and he was way more concerned about her reporting the harassment up the chain of command. Now, after witnesses told authorities about Robinson's struggle with a box that had, by the way, Guillén's remains in it, they looked into his phone records and they saw multiple exchanges between Robinson and Aguilar. So you would imagine, okay, well, this is a great opportunity to question Aguilar. They waited a full month before they did that. Okay, a full month. So Cenk, I want you to jump in. There are more details to this story, but I would just argue that the family is absolutely right in being angry with the way this case was investigated. It took 2 months for them to get to the bottom of what happened.
Yeah, so the murder itself is horrific, but we actually didn't know those details until now. The real cause of people's concern was, here's a woman who was considering reporting sexual harassment, and at this point it's unclear who might have taken part in that sexual harassment. It might have been more than Robinson. It might have, was it people that were higher up the chain of command in the military? Now, it's not to say that any of those people had anything to do with the murder. It appears that Robinson did the murder, and that seems fairly clear here. What his motivation was for the murder, we still have to find out more about that, obviously, right? But to me, there's two parts that was the original injustice that people were looking into. Well, one is you got a story about sexual harassment, and it doesn't appear that the military was pursuing it with vigor, especially as the person was missing. We didn't know if she was dead or alive, and so that's a member of the military. We're supposed to care, about them with all of our hearts and passions, and that's what all the bumper stickers say until a young woman in the military goes missing, and then all of a sudden there isn't much action. And so the pace of the investigation seems to have clearly picked up when activists and then celebrities started talking about it on social media, and then all of a sudden people started caring, and then which leads me to problem number two, which is, look, there's, I don't know, maybe there's no way of solving this, but it is deeply frustrating, especially in a country that's supposed to be better than this. You know that there's two different justice systems. In this case, it's about rank, right? In other cases, it's about race. In other cases, it's about class. But in this case, if it was a general that was missing, it would have been nonstop news. It would have been of the highest priority, and they would not have waited a month before talking to the person who they knew might have information about a missing general. That's inconceivable. Everybody on the planet knows it, right? So it's mainly about power in the different things that we talk about. Whether it's the issue of race, class, or status, it always comes back to power. And unfortunately, Guillén, being a young Latina woman in the army, didn't have much power. And so if she was accusing a higher ranking people of sexual harassment, I don't know if that's a second reason why they didn't more vigorously pursue the case. As it turns out, probably that was not what her murder was about, or at least in terms of if people were higher ranking than Robinson. We don't know that part yet. But the bottom line is, if like here, I'll give you one last example. Only 1/3 of the rape cases in America are solved by the police. Now forget prosecution, that's different. Just solved by the police, only 1/3. Only 2/3 of murder cases are solved by the police, unless it's a cop who was killed. Then 100% of the cases are solved. So that goes to show you that there is a power dynamic here. And if you're powerful in this country, you're gonna get royal treatment even in death. But if you don't have power for whatever reason, God help you, because the authorities likely won't.
And one other thing I wanted to mention is you're absolutely right. Power has a lot to do with it. And this also has a lot to do with a longstanding problem within the military that, Cenk, you and I were talking about on a regular basis on our show back in 2012, the issue of sexual assault and rape within the military. That problem was never solved. It continues to exist. And there are both men and women in the military who have been victimized, brutalized by other members of the military. And because of the way reporting works, things aren't done. Like necessary actions aren't taken to prevent these types of things from happening again in the future. So as I'm reading about, the family's interpretation of what happened and how Guillén had opened up to them about the sexual harassment, I couldn't help but remember all of those stories that we covered and just feel this internal rage about the fact that the more things change, the more they stay the same. The fact that this continues to be a problem in the military is maddening, to say the least. And I do want to go to the family now because, of course, they've been speaking to the press. They're angry at the way this case has been handled, and they wanted to really draw some attention to what Guillén was alleging prior to her being murdered. Take a look.
Their investigation is also focused on whether she was sexually harassed before her disappearance. Guillén's family says Robinson, who died by suicide Wednesday morning, sexually harassed her and accuses the army of covering it up.
They have lied to us multiple times, and that's one of the lies. My sister was sexually harassed multiple times.
The thorough investigation into sexual harassment will continue until it's complete.
In a press conference yesterday, Army investigators said Robinson was not in Guillén's chain of command and that there is no credible evidence so far he or anyone else sexually harassed her.
How are we going to believe their own internal investigation on themselves?
The Guillén's family attorney, Natalie Kawam, says the Army is hiding something.
We believe that he murdered her because she was going to report the sexual harassment.
Guillén's family says they're fighting to keep this from happening to anyone else in the military.
It's a disgrace that they haven't done nothing at all to help us. That's why we demand a congressional investigation to be done.
And Cenk, Myra Guillén, who is her sister, says she felt if she spoke, something would happen. I now realize everything leads back to them harassing her at work. And when she says something would happen, she meant that she would be retaliated against. And that is definitely the type of perspective that we've heard over and over again from women who had served in the military, who were also victimized through sexual harassment, sexual assault, or rape, and felt that there wasn't enough done to protect them and for justice to be served. It's part of the reason why the hashtag I am Vanessa Guillén was trending on social media over the weekend because women felt the need to share their stories of what they experienced in the military.
So last couple of things here. First of all, in terms of her reporting sexual harassment, sometimes people who don't believe it say, well, look, in the high profile cases, there's a famous politician or celebrity, and maybe somebody's looking to get attention or hurt someone politically or get money. In this case, there's no such thing. Why would Vanessa Guillén make up sexual harassment if the only thing you could do was get her in trouble in the military, which often is the case if you actually report people up the chain of command sexually harassing you? She's got absolutely nothing to gain, and she's apparently very scared to report it. So the military saying, "Oh no, it didn't happen," afterwards, not very convincing at all. And look, she was afraid to report it, and she's now dead. So there's some evidence that there was an issue there. And am I convinced the military, who didn't interview a potential witness for a month, has done a thorough investigation of itself here? And do I take their word that there was no sexual harassment? No, not at all. I don't believe it. And so, and that leads to the larger point. We accept things ranging from sexual harassment to outright rape all the time in certain institutions, and it is maddening. So the famous example everybody knows, it's in every movie, it's in popular culture, it's real. If you go to prison, we find it perfectly normal in America that you're gonna get raped. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. Other countries do not accept that. There's no reason for it. There's tons and tons of guards, but we allow rape in prisons nonstop. And nobody ever does anything about it. It's grotesque. And so, and the second place where it unfortunately happens all the time without much consequence is the military. Anna's right, we've been reporting these stories for now over a dozen years. And I remember during the Bush administration, female soldiers getting raped in Iraq while on assignment there. oftentimes, obviously brutally, and then there was eventually government hearings about it. But no, the military didn't believe them, even though there was overwhelming physical evidence, and almost never does anything about it. And so there's a culture of keep quiet and just take it, and no one should stand for that anymore.
We have to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to switch gears and dunk on Senator Joni Ernst, who's realizing that she is having a difficult time in polling, might have some difficulty getting reelected. So all of a sudden, she's trying to distance herself from Donald Trump, but it's not working. We'll give you that and more when
we need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of On the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
Return.
All right, back on Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. First, a shout out to our sponsor, Aspiration. So you guys know, I hope by now, that if you sign up to an account, we plant 10 trees, save the planet for you guys, save money, save the planet. Aspiration.com/TYT is how you do that. So good rates, no deposits used for oil drills or pipelines. Lots of good news about pipelines today. So aspiration.com/TYT. Check that out. All right, now let me read some of your comments. Lots of relevant comments about service in the military. Meg writes in, this is all our members. Sexual harassment or assault in the military is rampant, and they don't really do anything about it when it's reported. There's a good documentary on this called Invisible Wars. So everybody check that out. No More Trigonometry says, what's also wild to me is that he was able to kill her on the military base, clean up and transport her body away from the base. No one else there knew anything. Well, that's the thing. There actually was a guy who noticed him carrying a heavy bag and he thought it looked suspicious and reported it in. And again, it still took 2 months. And guaranteed if it was a missing general, they would have talked to that guy about the suspicious plastic bag way earlier and done something about it way earlier. Okay, Thirsty Goddess says, I was in the military and female. Yes, she was sexually harassed, period, no doubt. Sir Wyatt Hill says, sexual harassment ruined my wife's promising Army career from an NCO that was both a sexual harassment and equal opportunity representative. It got so bad, a female officer from another platoon noticed and had all the female leadership in a completely different platoon protecting her. So unfortunately, this is far too common, and that's why people are so animated about this case, even before we knew how gruesome it was. YouTube super chat, Robert Timmons says, thank you to TYT for all that you do. Thank you, Robert, for participating through super chat. I love you guys, writes in. Thank you, Cenk and Anna. You all make my day. 3 days without you was the worst. Wow, thank you. We'll talk about those 3 days and what we did a little bit in the post game and a little bit on old school tonight for all of our members. Hit the join button below to become a member if you're watching on YouTube. Thunder Voice 1 on Twitch. We're on Twitch. Says, showing some love to TYT, Hype Train initiated. Gave 136 bits. I like the Hype Train. I'm on board for the Hype Train. Thank you for watching. And please, if you're on Twitch, check out Between Me and Uygur. There's been some great episodes with some wonderful folks on there. I think you're gonna love those stories. I think it's one of the best things we do now. I mean, I know I'm the host, so it's a weird thing to say, but but it's not me. It's the guests are fantastic and their stories are amazing. Twitch.tv/TYT. All right, Anna, what's next?
Real quick, look, that format for the Twitch show is the right format for you. It's the only format for you, really, because it's not like, you know why, like giving Cenk the opportunity to just have a conversation and not feel pressured to like move on is perfect. Anyway, that was a needless backhanded compliment. Anyway.
Yeah, for those of you at home, let me decipher that for you. This format where we have to go through a number of stories, Cenk is not very good. But in another format where you don't have to,
no,
he might be a pretty decent host. Okay.
All right. Let's move on to Joni Ernst. So this story, I don't know. I love this story because she's struggling, but she's also failing. So Republican Iowa Senator Joni Ernst is facing a tough re-election battle. The numbers aren't looking good for her. In fact, some polls show that her Democratic opponent is in the lead. And she's starting to realize, hey, you know what? Maybe aligning myself with a president who fails at everything isn't such a good idea. So in her attempt to distance herself from Trump, she gave really strange answers in an interview on CNN over the weekend. I want to show you the first clip where there's a discussion about protesters and how Trump has demonized them.
Senator, as somebody who did fight in combat to protect the freedoms that you just talked about, would you agree, seeing what's happening out there, the protests, that the majority are actually peaceful and not the way the president described them?
Yes, I do think that there are so many peaceful protests, and that's exactly the kind of discussion and exhibition that we want to see, peaceful protests, and I support those peaceful protesters. But what we can't allow is violence and that type of disruption and destruction of whether it's personal or private property, public property. We can't allow that to happen. But again, we all need to come together. We need to sit down and we need to have some very real, very hard discussions. If we want to improve our country, we all need to come together.
You know who should engage in a hard and difficult discussion and do it from a place of honesty? Joni Ernst, if she thinks that she's going to have people buy any argument. Like, she's trying to straddle this line between the anti-Trump members of her constituency and the pro-Trump members of that constituency. And the truth is that answer was dumb. It was a dumb answer. Okay, that's like the best way to say it. Oh, no, the protesters are great. They're so peaceful. I mean, we can't have that violence. The violence is really bad, the violence. But the peaceful protesters, but we can't have the violence and the destruction. Peaceful protesters, though. Do you think we're stupid, Senator Ernst? She thinks we're stupid. And I love watching her struggle. I don't know what to do. I've aligned myself with a loser and a failure. So I'm gonna try to lie to the American people. Here's the thing, she has no principles. She is the standard politician that grates on everyone's nerves because there is no moral compass, there are no ethics, there's no political identity. The only thing that she shares with all the rest of these grifting politicians is her obsession with power. What do I need to do? How many lies do I need to tell in order to keep a firm grasp on my power? But people are a little smarter these days, Joni Ernst, and your answer was a non-answer. It was dumb.
Yeah. Well, the last part I'm not so sure about. Look, I don't get into this whole thing that American people are stupid. I just think that they lack information in the short term. And it's really not a euphemism. I really mean that. Having said that, man, people around politicians feed into their smarminess. So let me explain. To me, that was a prototypical political answer. Talking out of both sides of your mouth. First starts with a Diane Sawyer fake concern look as she's waiting for the question. Okay, and then she moves on to peaceful but violent, whatever you want to hear. That's what I have for you guys. But you guys all know that already. What you might not know is that in my brief political run, what I noticed was people around politicians encouraging that kind of smarminess and not being skeptical about it, both on the Republican and Democratic side. You had a lot of people, all the infrastructure, so all the people running the clubs, all the people that are like the most diehard loyal political folks. When politicians spoke in super obviously fake ways, they loved it. They ate it up. So I guarantee you, there's a whole heap of Iowa Republican leaders going, Joni Ernst, so good. The way she's concerned about everybody but nobody at the same time, it's just perfect. She's right for our community, right? Guaranteed that's what they're saying. Now, look, the thing is, overall, now back to the main political discourse in this country as it affects the United States Senate and the presidency. Ernst is trying to course correct here by a couple of degrees when they're running straight into the iceberg. A couple of degrees ain't gonna cut it. So you gotta lean heavy on that wheel away from Trump if you wanna win, even in places like Iowa. For her to be losing to someone who has no name recognition. I could barely remember Teresa Greenfield's name. I think that's who's running against her. And I'm neck deep in politics. So nobody in Iowa knows her, who she's running against. And she's still down 3 points because people think she's with Trump. She's got to lean super hard against that. Otherwise, she's going to lose. Remember, Obama won Iowa. So it's not like it can't be done. It could definitely be done in Iowa. So Ernst is in way more trouble than she realizes with this, tiny variance from Trump.
It's so delicious. I love watching her in trouble. So she struggled in this next question because she first tried to not answer it, but I gotta give Dana Bash some credit. She did ask a follow-up, and I absolutely love this. So let's take a quick look.
You criticized President Obama in 2014 for his handling of the Ebola outbreak, saying that he showed, quote, failed leadership. Only 2 people in the US died from Ebola. Right now, there are almost 130,000 Americans dead from coronavirus. So if President Obama showed failed leadership then, do you think President Trump is showing failed leadership now?
Well, I think we all have responsibility in stopping the spread. And certainly I've heard some of the discussions earlier. Wearing a mask is entirely appropriate. Social distancing is entirely appropriate. We have seen, I think, 1 additional death in the last 24 hours here in Iowa. So it is something that we absolutely should be paying attention to.
Is the president right now exhibiting failed leadership?
Well, I think that the president is stepping forward, and we have Vice President Mike Pence that is spearheading the task force efforts on the coronavirus. And so understanding where this came from, how it developed, of course, the pushback that we got from the Democrats when the president did try to shut down travel from some of those hot spots.
No, Joni Ernst, no. The Democrats are not the problem here. The question was about the leader of this country, Donald Trump, and whether he has failed in his COVID-19 response. And he has, without a doubt, failed. And I want to hold the media responsible for this because the press keeps reporting about Joni Ernst as if she is distancing herself from Trump. But understand that she is not doing that. She's not distancing herself from Trump. Distancing yourself from someone is clearly saying that you disagree with what they did, or in this case, in this context, Joni Ernst, if she were really distancing herself from Trump, she would say that Donald Trump's response to coronavirus has been a failure and a disaster. And when I compare it to how Obama handled Ebola, I realize I was wrong about Obama. Donald Trump has failed. That is what distancing sounds like and looks like. That's not what Joni Ernst is doing. So for all of these media outlets who are like, ooh, Joni Ernst, oh my God, wow, she's look so strong. No, she's not strong. What I just saw right there was weakness. I saw fear. And I saw someone who's flailing, doesn't know what she's doing, and she's terrified of losing her power. She has no guiding principles whatsoever. And just to remind you of where she's at in the polling, Cenk mentioned this earlier, but Ernst is locked in an increasingly competitive Senate race in Iowa, a traditional swing state, against Democrat Teresa Greenfield, who led Ernst by 3 percentage points in a Des Moines Register Mediacom Iowa poll published last month. So if you have friends or family member in Iowa, if you're in Iowa yourself, please encourage people to go out there and get this pathetic politician voted out of the Senate, period.
Yeah. Look, there's some great progressives in Iowa. J.D. Scholten is running for Steve King's old seat. You should support him. But look, honestly, at this point, I want to get rid of these, both Trump and his enablers in the Senate and all over Congress so badly. Sight unseen, Teresa Greenfield, definitely all in. Let's go, beat Joni Ernst. So now I wanted to make a couple points here. I thought the most relevant part of that clip that we just showed you was the Pence pivot, when she's like, no, Trump's fine, but Vice President Pence has been great, and I'm all about Pence, and Pence is, oh, I see. Now what they're gonna do is, Trump, who's Trump? I don't know who Trump is, but I like Pence. So that's their way of backing the administration without talking about how great Trump is. So Anna, you're so right about the main point you made, because if you notice, there is no direct quotes that you could take out of that interview of Joni Ernst saying something negative about Trump. Because if she does, it could hurt her with Republican voters. So the mainstream media gift wraps it for her. She gets credit, blaring headlines all over. Ernst distancing herself from Trump. She gets credit for the distancing without any damaging quotes that might hurt her with Republican voters, because she didn't actually distance. She just praised Mike Pence. She minimized the problems. She said that, yes, some of the protesters were peaceful. She didn't actually do it, but they gave her credit for it. With the exception of Dana Bash, who did a great job in that interview of doing tough questions and follow-up questions that were appropriate. And look, one last thing on this, and that goes to Dana Bash's question there. Ebola virus, 2 people die. Fox News lose their mind. Benghazi, 4 people died. Fox News talks about it nonstop. There were 33 hearings in Congress over Benghazi. 4 people died. 132,000 deaths. If it was a Democratic president, my God, if it was Hillary Clinton, Fox News would have a running count of the death toll every single day, every single hour, every single minute. And these Republicans are trying to minimize 132,000 deaths on their watch. Don't ever forget that.
Well, let's talk about one other pathetic politician who's incredibly weak, and that's Donald Trump. So, for all the criticism you hear from the right wing about cancel culture, no one loves to cancel more than Donald Trump. And the latest organization that's being canceled by Trump, I think like for the billionth time now, is Fox News, because apparently they reported on how poorly Trump is performing in polls against Joe Biden. And so he, of course, had a series of tweets going after Fox and urging people to watch some other outlets that are more favorable to him. But first, let's take a quick look at the segment that got Trump so upset.
Arizona, a red state, shows that former Vice President Biden is ahead, 7 points ahead in Florida. Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, there's the table right there. But what happens at the end with the Electoral College? Because, John, finally it all comes down to the Electoral College.
Yes, that's true. And in the numbers that you just cited, Eric, there's some surprises. It wasn't long ago that the president was leading in Florida and was close in some of these other states. But again, it's the gap between Biden leading and the president falling behind is a reflection of the polls basically also showing a disapproval of kind of the way the coronavirus has been handled. Now, the Electoral College could go a very different way, but it's hard for you to come up with the numbers that the president needs to win at the moment. Look, things can change. We're still many months away from the election. Entirely possible that the mood of the public could change very quickly. But at the moment, it's hard to come up with the number of Electoral College votes that the president needs to win.
So, Cenk, that was the exchange that Donald Trump threw a temper tantrum over. These are just the facts. These are the polls. This is what the poll indicates. And so he tweets to Fox News, arguing that Fox News gladly puts up the phony suppression polls as soon as they come out. We are leading in real polls. I mean, I've yet to see a single one of those so-called real polls, because people are sick and tired of watching the Democrat-run cities, in all cases, falling apart. Also now 96% approval rating in the Republican Party, another 2016. By the way, his approval rating is not 96% among Republicans anymore. I'll give you that number in just a minute. But he also urges people to watch OANN and Newsmax instead, because they do Trump's bidding for him and support him regardless of what he does. And they like to lie to their audience about what the reality is of the Trump administration and where he stands in the polling.
Yeah. So that's awesome on a couple of fronts. But there is one thing that I actually agree with him on, and it's the very end of the tweet when he said it's 2016 again. Except in this case, it's Donald Trump acting like Hillary Clinton. So now a lot of people in the press now realize the danger of Donald Trump, and so they're tough on him, relatively tough. And so they're happy to report those numbers, et cetera, and they're happy to report bad news about him, not Fox News, but MSNBC, CNN, et cetera. And so in this case, they're like, haha, can you believe Donald Trump doesn't believe the polling numbers and doesn't want anybody to say anything negative about him? I'm right there with you, brothers and sisters. That's stupid and terrible. But let's be honest, that's what Hillary Clinton did in 2016. And so if MSNBC ever reported anything negative, not just negative about Hillary Clinton, but that she might not win, the Clinton campaign, I know this for a fact. First of all, I talked to the reporters off the record. Second of all, Mika Brzezinski said it on the air. So the Clinton camp would call MSNBC every time and say, how dare you, don't ever suggest that Hillary Clinton might lose. Well, it turns out, unsurprisingly, that did not help her. It actually hurt her. It was part of her arrogance. It did voter suppression actually on her own side because it led people to believe she can't possibly lose. So they either voted for other people or stayed home. And it's that same loser mentality that Donald Trump has now. Okay, don't report the real news, report fake news, and don't worry, I'm gonna win no matter what, everybody stay home. It's not only wrong, but it's also politically stupid. It's not the right way to win. It's not the right way to get people excited about your side. So, and on this show, we're fair and honest. It was wrong when Hillary did it, and no one else will point out that she did that right now. There's no question she did, and it's wrong when Trump does it. And if you think Fox News is not right-wing enough, I mean, you're a lunatic. And so that's one guy. All he's doing is reading polls, and he's saying, yeah, if you lose Florida and Arizona, you're not gonna win the Electoral College. That's like saying 2 + 2 = 4. And Trump is raging, no, it can't equal 4. OANN and another series of letters is telling me that it equals 5 or 6. So I'm gonna watch them instead because I'm a little baby who just wants good news, even if it doesn't exist.
Well, we should have known that he's not so great with numbers as soon as it was reported that he went bankrupt 6 times. But I do want to go back to the actual polling because it really isn't looking good for him. And if he wants to keep his head in the sand, cool, awesome. Keep doing that. So Trump has seen the fastest declines in his approval rating in some 500 counties where there have been more than 28 coronavirus deaths to 100,000 residents, right? So Pew Research polling has shown that 17% of respondents that approved of Trump in March of this year now disapprove of the president. A Monmouth survey conducted from June 26th to 30th showed Biden ahead by 12 points with 53% compared with Trump's 41%. USA Today and Suffolk polls conducted from June 25th to 29th found the same results. Overall, the Real Clear Politics average of national polls showed Biden ahead by about 8.7 points. And the Real Clear Politics averages of polls in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Florida showed that Biden is ahead ahead by 5 or more points in each state. So you're right, Cenk. I mean, it doesn't really help a candidate to pretend like this reality doesn't exist, but I have no interest in giving him any advice that helps him. I mean, he's not interested in any advice that helps him, clearly. He only surrounds himself with yes men who end up hurting him with policy and now with electoral politics as well. And then finally, you know how he said that 96% of Republicans support him? For a long period of time, that was true. But he has bungled the coronavirus response so much that the 96% has dropped down to 82% among Republican voters. It's still a high number, but still it's relevant considering how loyal Republican voters had been to Donald Trump, regardless of what he had done.
Yeah, these numbers are unrecoverable. So if he does drop out, he'll pretend that he could have won. No, he cannot win. So like if you were watching this and go, no, Jake, don't make the same mistake. I didn't make that mistake in 2016. A lot of people, almost everybody on TV made that mistake. We didn't make that mistake. We thought he could have won in 2016. We said that a million times. Okay.
Don't give me credit. Don't give me credit. I did not think he would win. You did. So yeah, no, you sent an email a few nights before the election saying, "Oh my God, I feel sick to my stomach. I think he could win." And yeah, it happened.
Yeah, and so look, the other person honestly I'm giving credit to is Ben Mankiewicz. He was also warning this is entirely possible, right? And so we were made fun of Huffington Post and New York Times for their outlandish numbers on Hillary Clinton's chances of winning. Now I'm telling you the reverse. His approval rating is 39. His disapproval rating is 59. He's 20 points underwater. You cannot recover from 20 points underwater with 4 months left to go. He's losing in every swing state and non-swing states like Georgia and Arizona. The Real Clear Politics average of 8.7 is misleading because the closer polls are further out. The polls that are blowouts are closer to today. And look, he's now massively underwater with Catholic voters. He won Catholic voters decisively last time around. In every category, he's in abysmal shape. Fox News did not do it justice. They just mentioned top line numbers. If you read all the numbers, it's absolutely devastating. If it wasn't Trump, every rational person would be saying this election is all but over. They're just so scared to say that because it's Trump and they think he's magical. He isn't magical. He's an idiot who went bankrupt 6 times. He was lucky because he was running a populist campaign against the most establishment candidate we've ever seen. Now he's no longer populist. He filled his cabinet with Goldman Sachs people. He's taken hundreds of millions of dollars from Republican donors. He's done corruption. And finally, the coup d'etat, or that's a funny Freudian slip, coup de grace here is the coronavirus numbers that Anna read you. In counties where coronavirus is peaking, Donald Trump's numbers are plummeting. And guess where they're peaking? Everywhere. So coronavirus is an absolute disaster right now. And unfortunately, I wish it weren't the case. It affects all of us. I'm scared to death for my parents and for everyone that we love. But it is peaking everywhere. And everywhere they see reality with their own eyes and they see loved ones dying and they see hospitals starting to get overwhelmed, they're gonna go, oh, it turns out it was all hype. It wasn't real. That's what's already happening. And it's only gonna get worse from here on out. Like the degree to which Trump is going to get humiliated in this election is immeasurable.
Well, we're actually going to give you more of an update on coronavirus when we come back after the break. So stick around for that and more stories when we return.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Let me read your comments, go to members first. Someone who likes Bernie Sanders wrote in, strategically, you got to feel bad for these Republican politicians. Praise Trump and you hold the base, but you can't get anyone past 35% of the country. Go too far away from MAGA land, though, and you'll lose the whole base. Absolutely right. I don't feel bad for them, and neither do you, but this is how Trump might destroy the Republican Party. At the beginning of Trump's rise, this is what Republican leaders were worried about, and it's wonderful to see it come to fruition. Burrito Bandito seems to have Anna's slogan, be salty and carry a huge microphone. It could be your sigil or something like that, or your family saying, Anna, on your sigil.
Yeah. Well, and I do have a huge microphone. Like, look at this thing. This thing is gigantic. Anyway.
Good. All right, and on YouTube Super Chat, Max Moraski says, just donated $127. By the way, will I get confirmation so I can receive that epic shirt? Hashtag we press on. It is, in fact, an epic shirt. I love it. I'm going to wear it on Old School tonight. Well, you're going to see that tomorrow on live, at least for some folks. Anyway, membership gets all of Old School. And yes, if you give $127 through tyt.com/go, you get that awesome T-shirt. In fact, let's take a really quick look at the thermometer, see where we are. 31,236. Wonderful, guys. Can I see 32,000? All right, look, seriously, the reason we said press on is because we do have to press on. We got to get through 2020. I do see the light at the end of the tunnel in 2021 on a lot of fronts. So thank you for keeping us strong and sustainable. Last one, Mike Billers on Super Chat says, happy early birthday, Anna. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Now enough of that nonsense.
I'm gonna share some birthday stuff in the post game, just real quick. But anyway, let's get to the next story.
No, but seriously, if you want to catch the post game, though, a lot of people still don't know. tyt.com/join or hit the join button below if you're watching on YouTube. All right, go ahead, Anna.
All right. Donald Trump has bungled his response to coronavirus so badly that his advisors are doing their best to reframe his talking points in a way that doesn't make people feel bad about the fact that their family members are dying due to his lack of leadership and incompetence. So the Trump camp's goal, according to the Washington Post, is to convince Americans that they can live with the virus, that schools should reopen, professional sports should return, a vaccine is likely to arrive by the end of the year, and the economy will continue to improve. Basically, just tell people anything and everything to make them feel better, when in reality, coronavirus is surging in most states, and we have now lost 130,000 Americans when it didn't need to be this bad. With the proper planning, with the proper leadership, we could have prevented all of these, not all of these, but a lot of these people from dying. White House officials also hope Americans will grow numb to the escalating death toll and learn to accept tens of thousands of new cases a day. So one individual, a campaign or former administration official, I should say, told the Washington Post, they're of the belief that people will get over it, or if we stop highlighting it, the base will move on and the public will learn to accept 50,000 to 100,000 new coronavirus cases a day. But honestly, this has been a losing strategy for Trump. In fact, a Gallup poll released Thursday of last week found a new high of 65% of Americans saying that the coronavirus situation is getting worse, and that's up from 48% just the week before. Cenk.
Yeah, so a current senior administration official said, quote, Americans will quote, live with the virus being a threat, end quote. Okay, so basically they're saying live with it, or in this case, die with it. And we're not going to do anything. It's unbelievable. So now, oftentimes the press will say, well, that's Donald Trump, but remember, he's an aberration. The rest of the Republicans are just wonderful people. These establishment folks that are our friends, right? Really? Because senior Senate Republicans and Kevin McCarthy, the leader of the Republicans in the House, got together and did give Donald Trump advice. So that they tell him, hey, concentrate on the mass and be careful on the health and care, and should we give more money to providing health care and or providing more relief? No. They apparently had a unified message for Donald Trump: blame China. So they encourage Trump to be more racist, not less racist, and to not do anything about the actual healthcare problems in this country. That's who the Republican Party is. It's Washington Post reporting. They said, blame it on China and move on, right? They're the worst. They don't care about you at all.
By the way, I mean, that messaging is so easy to respond to in an aggressive and I think very effective way. All you do is say, oh, didn't know that the leader of China is also the leader of the United States. Didn't know that he was the one responsible for all the deaths in the United States due to Trump's inaction, right? Like, Donald Trump is the leader of this country. And from the very beginning, he has basically told governors that they're on their own. He's downplayed the severity of this virus, and the fish rots from the head down, as we know. And to make matters worse, you have all these pool parties and beach parties over the 4th of July weekend where people were not social distancing and were also rubbing up against each other as this pandemic continues on. So let's take a look at that.
There are also pictures coming out of, for example, Missouri at the Lake of the Ozarks, and at least 2 restaurants here showing images of people coming together here. We should point out that there's no statewide requirement there for people to wear masks. And then finally, I do want to show you these pictures that have come out of a party, a so-called sandbar party at one lake in southwest Michigan. And in there, you can clearly see partygoers. They appear to be clustered together in close proximity. One of the folks who helped organize, or at least one of the residents nearby, saying that this is a party organized by residents for residents here, has gone on already for decades, at least 30 years straight, these kinds of parties that go on. We also heard a little while ago from authorities there, local health officials, saying they were actually aware of this since it tends to happen every year.
I gotta be honest, those parties looked really fun, but super irresponsible. And you have to do the right thing. Please don't go to these parties. Please socially distance, because it's not just about you if you're young and healthy. It's about who you're likely to spread this virus to. And by the way, just to give you a few numbers, hospitalizations continue to rise at a record pace. The number of intensive care unit patients with confirmed infections is up 63% over the last 3 weeks. Cenk.
Yeah. In every state that they had those wild parties, Missouri, Wisconsin, and Michigan, coronavirus cases are peaking. So not connected to those parties. I'm saying they were already peaking, then they have the parties, and then we'll see if the parties made it worse. But part of the reason is you have somebody blaring from the bully pulpit, masks are no big deal. And just last week, he said it will disappear. Don't worry, coronavirus will disappear. A moron of epic proportions is our so-called leader, and that's why we have the mess that we have now. We'll see you in the post game. Really important stories, including who's going to run for president on the Republican side in 2024. It's a little shocking. Hit the join button. We'll see you there.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk, and I'll see you soon.